My name is Jeff Stokes. I am a high school social studies teacher at the Osseo-Fairchild School District. I'm originally from Bloomer, Wisconsin. I came to Eau Claire in 1991, my freshman year of college, and I've lived here ever since. I came from a large family. I was the youngest of 9 children. I had 4 brothers and 4 sisters, and each of them was at least 10 years older than me. So I was a little bit of an afterthought. We were a farming family up until I was 5, and then at that time we moved to the city, big city of Bloomer, and my parents took over managing and running the Main Street Cafe restaurant. For me, it was somewhat unique because being as young as I was, most of my siblings were out of the house as I was growing up, and so I remember as a young boy going to church on my own. Both my mom and dad worked on Sundays. My mom had to run the Main Street Cafe, and so that meant that I went to church on my own, which was interesting. But I was an altar boy, Catholic church in Bloomer. My dad was not a religious person. My mom was, but I think because of my dad's situation, she kind of felt a little bit as if she maybe shouldn't be as involved as she maybe wanted to be. When I was younger, I lost all 4 of my grandparents. And so for our family, that was where our faith really, I think, was the strongest, just in our ability to deal with and handle those losses. Those were some of the things that I remembered with the family and the funerals and how we dealt with that. You know, I think it's interesting because a lot of times I think families or people, when they deal with loss of a family member, I think that's when a lot of people start to question their faith. But for me, I think that's when it's been the strongest. And I think maybe that started when I was younger, dealing with my grandparents. But I lost my dad and my brother about 2 months apart. And for me, it was really important to know that they were in a better place. And I think that's what my faith provided me. My immediate family, I have a wife, Wendy. I've been married to her for 16 years. My last year of college, actually, we met. She was in grad school and I was just finishing up. It was interesting given who her father is. Her dad is Ken Anderson, was the basketball coach at UW-Eau Claire for many years. And I met Wendy when I was younger as a camper going to his basketball camp. She didn't know who I was, I just knew that she was Ken Anderson's daughter. And so that presented an interesting dynamic because Ken as a coach was a little bit intimidating, and meeting him for the first time was also very intimidating. But I found that over time that we had so much in common with our connections to sports and love of his daughter. So, yeah. I think it comes back to the love that we have for one another, the trust we have in one another, and just knowing that we're always going to be there for one another. I think that's huge, and I think that's a big connection to our faith. Growing up with a farming family and then the restaurant, the one thing that was really taught to me at an early age is the value of hard work, and so that's what I try to emulate as best as I can, and that's the message that I try to give my boys. I have 2 sons, Connor, who is 14. He's a freshman at Eau Claire Memorial, and Mason is 11, and he's in 5th grade at Meadowview.
Mason, you're on offense, who's with you?
Well, believe it or not, sports. Wendy is pretty good at being accepting of that. I think the fact that she grew up in a sports household, probably she knew what she was getting into. And we plan our family vacations around sports. We took a vacation a few years back and we went out to New York. I'm a big New York Yankees fan. Got to go to Yankee Stadium. We also went to the Little League World Series. We also went to Cooperstown. Well, I'd love for them to be starting shortstop and center fielder for the New York Yankees. But, I guess with our involvement in sports, I'm hoping that, when it's all said and done, the effort and the hard work, that is something that carries over to them, no matter what their future holds, that whatever it is, that they're successful, they enjoy doing what they're doing.
I've got the basketball first.
I saw teaching as a way for me to share my passion of the social studies. I also saw it as a way to continue with sports through coaching. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to play basketball forever, but this was a way that I thought I could extend out my competitiveness and also, again, share that passion, my passion for sports and for basketball.
Does that kind of make sense? Okay.
You're giving back. You're giving back to kids. You're sharing with them your passions. You're providing them, in many cases, with one of the main positive influences, positive adult influences they might even have in their lives.
Stop. Good job.
I think it is the connections and the relationships that are made. Ultimately, when it's all said and done, if they remember anything that I taught them, that's going to be great. But more importantly, I think it's the relationship that they establish with me. And
All right.
it definitely is a balancing act. Sports take on a whole new meaning when you have both participating in multiple sports, and a lot of times that ends up being on the weekends. So we've found time for church. Wednesday night services come in handy when we have Sunday tournaments and different things like that. But I think the key here with all of this is keeping proper perspective. Sports aren't going to be the end-all, be-all when it's all said and done. And so church is still a very valuable part of our lives. Wendy grew up in Trinity as her church, and then she brought me into it when we got engaged, and has been our church ever since. I think Trinity, more so than any place I've ever been, is more about a community than anything else. I feel the involvement with youth in the baptisms. It almost comes down to the social aspect, and the connections that are made through church are almost as important as the faith itself. There's people that I see out in that I recognize from Trinity, and those connections that are made just knowing that we share the same faith, we share Trinity. I think that's huge. It's a welcoming community, and I don't know that church always is seen that way. It's welcoming in terms of it being accepting. I think that's really inspiring for me. I'm a little bit more optimistic than come across as. And so I think my optimism comes with just every day, especially as a teacher, because I know that each day is going to bring challenges, but at the same time it's going to bring, the new positives with, getting that spark in that student. I'm hopeful that, they remember me as their teacher, they remember me as their coach, they remember me as maybe a mentor, as a positive role model, someone that had a positive impact on their lives.
Good job. Good job.
I think it again comes back to the love that Wendy and I have for them, and the love that they obviously see in us, and how that maybe has shaped who they've become as a result of the influence that we've both had. I think that probably for me started really at a young age with the values that I was taught. And I think those values were taught to me growing up in a Christian family. I don't always know that it's necessarily that it's a Christian as much as it's just the right thing to do. But I think the two are one and the same.